Good evening, everyone. It's me, Dr. Plague. We talk a lot about horror on this channel, but the real horror out there is how easy it is for your data to fall in the hands of disreputable people. That's why today's video is sponsored by Aura. While you're enjoying today's spooky video, data brokers, those things that go bump on the web, could already be selling your information to scanners, spammers, and anyone else who may want to target you. Your full name, email, home address, your health records, your relatives, they could all be out there. That's why I've been using Aura. Aura shows me which data brokers are selling my information and automatically submits opt-out requests, just for me. It was simple to use and very intuitive, and I had barely gotten out of the setup process, and it was already blocking over 20 data broker requests on my behalf. Aura protects your passwords, your banking information, everything you need for day-to-day online life. Cleaning up my information not only helps reduce the amount of spam I get, but it also protects me from hackers who could use my information to help them access my social media accounts, bank accounts, other sensitive information. Things like a certain YouTube channel that you all enjoy listening to so much. Aura also does much more to protect me and my family from online threats, the kind you can't see. It comes with other features like antivirus, VPN, password management, parental controls, identity theft insurance, and more, without having to download several different apps. It really is just that easy to set up, and best of all, I get everything at one affordable price. I hear you saying, but Dr. Plague, I have one or two of these tools already. But, dear readers, not having Aura is like locking the front door and leaving the back door wide open. Readers of my fine tales can tell you why that never ends well. Aura is always on, doing the hard work of keeping me safe so I can focus on other tasks like finishing my latest book or uploading my most recent video. I value my privacy, and I know you value yours. You can go to Aura.com, that's AURA.com, to start your 2-week free trial. You can also check out the link below and start your free trial with Aura. So why not give Aura a try and protect yourself from the real monsters out there? Someone was screaming. The sound pulled me from a dream, and I woke in the dark, short of breath and damp with sweat. It was my mother, I realized. Have you ever noticed how you can recognize the voice of one close to you, even through as little as a cough or a cry? There's no need for words. I heard and knew it was her. I sat up in bed, confused and frightened. The screams had stopped, but I could still hear talking downstairs. My parents. I slid out from beneath the covers and crept to my door, bare feet cold on the ancient wooden boards. A decade had passed, but I still remember the strongest details. The way those floorboards creaked, the dust that made me sneeze, the shadows of the night clouds slipping silently across the scene, nipping at my heels. All these things, as meaningless as they were, are burned into me, like scars when I close my eyes. Mom and Dad's voices were raised, upset. In our old home, they would have woken the neighbors by now. But not here, not in the middle of nowhere. There was no one within a mile. I held the door handle and eased it down so it made no sound, stepping into the hallway, leaving my door open behind me. Moonlight spilled out around my feet, a pale wash chasing shadows into the corners. Felt like I'd only been asleep for a few hours, but I couldn't be certain. I worked my way to the top of the stairs, a few inches at a time. I could make out occasional words from below, but nothing yet that made any sense. I'd stopped to listen when the door beside me creaked open, making me jump. My younger sister, Maria, was only 6, all wide eyes and worried face and tousled black hair that hung wild around her. I recall thinking it was odd that our brother Ryan hadn't left his room. Usually if our parents woke us up with their arguing, he would be up first to get us back to sleep and tell us not to worry, to tell us not to listen. "Go to bed," I hissed at her. She frowned and retreated, but kept the door ajar. I tiptoed forward onto the top step, listening. My father, loud and demanding. "Tell you again. Now don't make me do it, Lisa." "Do what?" My mother's angry, tearful. "Crazy. Don't do this. Call the police. Phone an ambulance. Please, David, please." Her voice went on as I heard footsteps approaching the stairs. They were coming up. A surge of panic, and I turned, rushing back to my room. I caught my sister peering around her doorframe and mouthed, "Go!" to her as I passed. The footsteps behind me grew closer, my mother's voice clear. I climbed back into bed, heart racing, when I heard her feet in the hallway. They went into Ryan's room, which was opposite of Maria's, but not their own opposite mine. Why, I wondered. Where was my brother? Dad was speaking, voice thick and heavy. He told Mom to sit down, then again louder, and she snapped a reply I couldn't make out. "Did you break the rules I gave you?" he asked her. "Did any of you?" My mother replied inaudibly. "Did you break any of the rules I gave you?" His voice raised again. "Just answer me!" "No." Her voice broke as she shouted back. "No! Please, David, for God's sake, phone an ambulance. It might not be too late. It might not. You don't know. You don't know it." "Did anyone come in the house?" He cut her off, tone low and threatening. "Did any of you leave?" "No, David, please." She was still speaking when I heard him step into the hall. Then the door closed and keys rattled. My mother's voice rose to a scream, and I could hear her running across the floor. "What are you doing?" Her hands were hammering on the door. "David, what are you doing? Don't hurt them, David. Don't you hurt our girls. David, please." Why would she say that, I thought. He would never hurt us. My father would never hurt me. What was going on? I heard the creak of floorboards beneath her cries, and then Dad opened my sister's door. He spoke quietly. I couldn't make it out. Maria's door closed and locked. Then he was walking again, towards my room. Mom was still shouting, sobbing, calling our names, words collapsing into each other until they were only sounds of frustration, pain, and rage. My door opened. I looked over the edge of the covers, pretending I was still asleep. I was so scared, I didn't know what else to do. My father stood in the doorway. He was holding a shotgun, and it was pointed at my chest. "Evie, sweetheart, we need to talk." We had only been in the house for a week. If everything had went to plan, we would have been gone before another month had passed. At the beginning of the year, Dad's elder brother had passed away. He was the only one living member on that side of the family, so my father inherited everything. Our parents were contacted by a law firm who had been engaged as executors of the will, and a meeting was organized to discuss the details. Now, our dad hadn't spoken to his brother in decades, or anyone on his side of the family for that matter. Ryan, Maria, and myself had never met any of them. Dad would never talk about them. Strangely, he seemed more worried than upset by the news of our uncle's death. When my parents attended the meeting, the true scope of the inheritance was revealed. The home, left to him, was more than a century old and had once housed 20 family members and staff. 3 floors, basement, attic, outhouse, and miles of property. At present, most of the place was filled with an accumulation of possessions of 5 generations of rich landowners. The contents alone could be worth a small fortune. The house and the grounds certainly were. My mom, shocked and delighted, couldn't wait to tell us. Dad, however, remained taciturn, simultaneously unsurprised and pained by his apparent good fortune. He didn't want to accept it, he said. Our mother couldn't believe him and demanded to know why. Because of the condition of the will, he told her. We would all have to move there, and take possession of the house. No one except family could be allowed inside, not under any circumstances. But he didn't want to go back there, no matter what the offer was. He certainly wouldn't take his wife and children to that godforsaken place. Mom was furious. She thought it was crazy to turn it down. So what if he had to move there? His refusal to explain any further only made it worse. They argued on and off for weeks. There was a silence between them that went on for days until we were in bed. Then the arguments would begin again. Why wouldn't he accept the house? She would ask. Why wouldn't he explain? My father never answered, just repeated the same refusal and denials. Whatever happened there's over, I heard her say one night. You never spoke to them, never spoke about any of them. They're gone. I'm your wife. We're your family, here and now. I lay awake in bed, picking out bits and pieces as I tried to sleep. I never heard the final argument, but Ryan did. He told me and Maria about it on the walk to school. Mom said she had spoken to a lawyer of her own about the will. We could move there for just a short time, she said, maybe only a month. Then we claim we can't stay because it's hurting the kids' upbringing. It wouldn't even be a lie. There isn't a good school for 40 miles, police or ambulance for that matter. No other families are nearby. It's isolated. We say it's affecting all our mental health. There's no living relatives to contest with. My lawyer thinks that we could fight it out in court and win. Afterwards, we sell what we can and keep what we like. Do anything we want. We'll be rich, David. No more 5 people living in 2 bedrooms. We could do whatever we want. All we have to do is make it look like we tried. My father hadn't replied. Then Mom told him that she would leave with us if he didn't accept it. Divorce. To be refusing this opportunity, just throwing away all our futures, she said, over reasons that he couldn't even explain. If he could be that stupid and selfish, then he didn't deserve to be our father, and wasn't the man that she thought he had been. David had left after that, Ryan told us. Went out for hours during the night. The 2 of them didn't speak at all the next day. Then a week later, our parents sat us down and said they had news. We were going away together to clear out and sell the old house that we had inherited. It should only be a month or so, they said. Then we could come back home. I need you to tell me what you done today. Dad? I began to cry, unable to hold back the tears. What's going on? Why is... Answer me, Evie. I don't want to hear anything else. Tell me what happened today, and nothing else. You understand? When I drove back to the city this afternoon, did someone come to the house? Did any of you leave? Tell me true. He never came any closer than the doorway, keeping the gun on me the entire time. Nothing happened. I was too upset to think clearly, unable to take it all in. My mother told him we never left the house, didn't she? Why had she lied? Was Dad gonna hurt me if he found out? I glanced at the wall beside my room, and he noticed. You heard what we were saying, me and your mom. Of course you did. I didn't reply. I just wiped away the tears and tried to hold back any more. It's okay. I'm not gonna hurt you, baby. The barrel lowered. I could see his eyes were red where he'd been crying. This was hurting him, I realized. Doing this was hurting him. I just need you to tell me the truth. This is very important, Evie. What did you do today? Did you go out? I was just a child, overwhelmed and confused. Every time in my life I'd been frightened, I would run to my dad. Every time I needed someone, I could call his name and he'd be there. Now he was the one I was scared of, and I was lost. I started to get out of bed to go to him, but he pulled back, the gun snapping up. No! He pointed the weapon right at me. Stay where you are. Don't move. Back on the bed. There was a pleading in his eyes and voice. Please, Evie, don't make me. I had never seen him angry and emotional like this. Never in my life. He'd never even shouted at me before. He just wasn't that type of man. Evie, tell me right now, did any of you leave the house today? Yes. I saw it hit him, this truth like a physical blow, sapping the strength from his body. He took a faltered step back and leaned against the doorframe, face paling to ghost white, a sharp intake of breath through his clenched teeth. We went to the village. I kept talking, not knowing what else to do. I couldn't stop the words once they had started. All of us, we got separated at the shop, and Mom got angry. Maria, she ran off to see the horses. There were horses in one of the open fields. I went after her, but she wouldn't come back. Mom and Ryan had to help till we found her. I remember that afternoon, chasing my sister down stone side streets under the gray sky. We were just going for a walk. Mom had told us to get out of the house for an hour. She had said, handing us our coats, but remember, don't tell your dad. She laughed, and Ryan did too. Dad was being silly, we thought. The four of us took a winding path through the trees and across the fields of wet grass until we reached the village. A church, a shop, and a dozen homes. We found everything closed and silent. I didn't see a single other person, not even a face at a window or a passing car. Maybe no one lives here anymore, Ryan said. Mom didn't say anything. When Maria ran off, I followed, but I couldn't make her come back on her own. I went for my mom and brother. When I found Maria the second time, we all came home. Nothing happened. How long were you all separated? My father's words were cold now, flat and emotionless. How long were you on your own? I don't know. How long, Evie? 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. He wasn't looking at me anymore, just staring at the floor. He wiped the sweat from his forehead with a shaking hand and backed into the hall. Daddy, where's Ryan? He glanced up, our eyes meeting, and I'd never seen hurt on his face like I did then. But he didn't answer me, just swung the door closed and locked it. A minute or so passed, and I could hear him pacing the floor, steps interspersed with cries from my mother, which he ignored. Then his voice, just outside my room. Evie, I need you to stay here for a little while, baby. Stay away from this door. I'll be back soon, okay? There was a second pause, and then, I love you. I heard him go to my sister's room. He spoke to her briefly through the door, then he headed upstairs. My mom kept shouting, calling his name as the footsteps receded. I hadn't even moved since he left, just sat there on the bed, cracked and hollowed out. Evie? My mom's voice came from the next room. I went to the wall and knelt down, pressing my ear against it. Are you okay, sweetheart? I'm okay, Mom. Did I do something wrong? No, baby, no, of course not. I'm gonna get us out of here, okay? It's gonna be all right. He won't hurt you. I won't let him hurt you. Your dad, he just isn't feeling well. He isn't himself. We'll get help. It's gonna be okay. I promise. I could hear footsteps on the stairs again, and my mom moved away from the wall. The rattle of keys and the door of her room opened. I stayed where I was, still, and listening. Get back to the window, Lisa. My father's voice was colder than before, dead and hardened. I told you not to go out. Why'd you lie to me? You were pointing that gun at me. She didn't cry anymore. Her words were clear and angry. I was scared. I didn't know what you would do if I told you. I didn't know what to say. I'd seen our... Stop. Tell me what happened today. We went out, like Evie told you. We went for a walk, David. A grown woman and her children went out for a walk. We're not prisoners, are we? We're not... I asked you not to. I've never asked anything of you since we've been together. His voice strained, cracking as he spoke. I've never asked you to do anything for me, change anything for me, not ever. It was just this once I needed you to trust me. One time, follow the rules I gave you. Why, David, why? You order your family to follow these stupid rules, but you won't explain why. We thought you were losing your mind. All of us did. You've been so strange since we got here. You won't tell me anything. I'm your wife. You act like I'm some idiot who can't be told the truth." "Shut up." His reply was so loud and sudden that I pulled away from the wall. "You don't have any idea. No idea what you've done." "Then tell me." Her voice changed, pleading, understanding. "Tell me what's going on. You can tell me, David. We can—" "Stop it. Stop changing the subject. What happened today in the village?" "Nothing, David. Nothing happened. We went to the local shop, but it was closed. Walking in the—" "You got split up, the four of you." "Maria ran off. Was gone for 2 seconds, David. You know what she's like. She ran off and Evie went after her. When she couldn't catch her, we split up and found her." Something clattered on the floor. "Put 'em on. There's a metal bar underneath the window. Around that." "Are you serious?" "Do it, Lisa." I heard her moving, then the sound of a chain followed by a metallic snap. She started to speak again, but he was already leaving, locking the door behind him. He went to Maria, and a few minutes passed, voices too quiet to understand. I thought I heard Maria crying, but I couldn't make out any words. I was too afraid to move closer to listen. Then more footsteps. "Evie, can you hear me?" "Yes." My voice wavered, coming out as a broken whisper. "I need you to stand away from the door. Back at the window, baby, okay? I'm gonna come in, but I need you to stand there. Do you understand?" Uh-huh. "Speak properly, Evie. Say you understand. This is important." I understand." "Do it now, honey." I scrambled over to the glass on all fours and put my back against the ledge. For a second, I saw the keyhole go dark and realized he was looking through it. Then the door unlocked, and he came in, gun still raised and pointed at me. He had a pistol now as well. I caught a glimpse of it under his shirt, tucked into his belt. His other hand held a pair of handcuffs. He tossed them on the floor, and they skidded to my feet. "The metal bar behind you, Evie, under the window. Put the cuffs around that bar, then clip them on your wrist." I nodded, picking them up and trying to do as he asked. "You have to trust me, baby, okay? I've always protected you, haven't I? Always. I need you to trust me." The handcuffs clicked into place, and I tightened them as he instructed. Then he backed out again and was gone. Through the window, a full moon flashed beneath the clouds. My breath steamed the glass, and the metal of the cuffs were cold on my skin. All I could do was wait. That house was unusual in many ways, not simply its isolation or my father's fear. Some of these things were small details I didn't pick up at first or thought nothing of, but not all. With the exception of my parents' room, every door was thick, heavy, and locked with a key. The only difference in their door was having no key, just an iron latch on the inside. As for the windows, none could be opened from either side, not on any floor. Those metal bars that he put the cuffs around could be found under every one of those windows. The basement was filled with dusty, battered books we weren't allowed to read, and moldy boxes we weren't allowed to look at. Then there was the attic. My brother had gotten a look inside before Dad sent him back downstairs. It was filled with weapons, Ryan had told me. Old rifles and pistols and crossbows, marked and faded with rust and wear. Every part of the house seemed to be wasting away, decaying like a carcass stripped of its bones. It felt like somewhere you hid from life, not somewhere you lived. There was a story there only my father knew, and it was a story he would never tell. When he returned, he went to my mother first. I shuffled as close to the wall as I could to listen. "I've checked every part of this house to be certain. No one else is in here. No one else could have gotten in. It's impossible. That's how this place was built. I know that as well as anyone. I survived here for 16 years. My mother's reply was quiet, barely audible. "You're sick, David. You need help. All of this, it's insane. What are you doing here to me, to your family, to our girls, our son, Ryan, our son, David? This is insane." Whoever's done it is in this house, Lisa. You understand that, don't you? Do you get that? He went on as if he hadn't heard her. One of the four of us. Could be you see. Could be you who... Well, we'll find out when the sun comes up. What are you talking about? Please, David, please. This is... I couldn't have told you. You would have thought I was crazy. You'd have taken the kids. I tried to stay away from this place, but you wouldn't listen. Didn't leave me any choice, did you? I should have known better. I did know better, but I still made the wrong decision. I could hear the waver in his speech, the grief and the pain and desperation. David, they aren't like people think, he snapped, suddenly cutting her off. They're patient. Easier to stop in some ways. Much harder in others. They need to catch you alone. We're safe when we're inside or together, you see. Should never be alone, especially not outside. He paused for a moment, and I pressed close to the wall. The wounds don't even show. I know that. I remember that. So you can't tell. Sometimes they don't even know what they are, Lisa. Like two minds in one body, like a parasite inside, waiting for a chance. David, his words were calm and focused. Listen to me. I don't understand what you're saying. I can't understand. But we can help. Please, whatever it is, whatever's wrong, we can fix it. Put down the gun. Let's go and call for help. We can go home. We can... No, it's too late for that. It's much too late. If you'd done what I asked, just done what I asked, it wouldn't have to be this way. But you never listened to me. Never. I heard movement then, and the door locked again. He went to my sister's room, and a minute later, he came to see me. He was pale, soaked in sweat, bottom lip cracked and bleeding. Evie, I have to do this, honey, okay? To keep you safe, to keep us all safe. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I'm so sorry, but we have to do this. They can hide away from the crosses and questions, but the light always hurts them, at least a little. So then we'll know. I think I must have slept eventually. The sound of my father pacing the halls, the occasional shouts of my mother, they all faded as the empty hours passed. I used my feet to pull down the cover and pull it around me as best I could. I thought about my brother. Was he hurt? Mom had wanted to call the police, call an ambulance. Why wouldn't Dad do that? What had happened? Ryan couldn't be dead. No, not my brother. He couldn't be. I watched the forest through the dark windows, its glass now touched with frost. Watched for so long, I didn't know if I was awake or in a dream. The wind sighed and moved, and the shadows followed. And those dark shapes between the trees could have been figures or branches, or nothing at all. Morning was close. As the hours passed, I thought I could hear scraping sounds from Mom's room, very faint, only growing louder when my father was downstairs to use the toilet. When he returned, she began shouting at him again, loud and suddenly. He ignored her for a minute, then, realizing she wasn't going to stop, strode to her room. I heard the lock turn and the creak of hinges. Then it began. Rapid footsteps, followed by a cry, something striking flesh and a person falling, or more than one. My mother cursed, and metal hit the floor. I had sat up, every muscle tensed. I could hear her breathing heavily, moving around the room, lifting and dragging a heavy something. In a second, she was at my door, unlocking it and pulling it open, saying my name. She had the shotgun under one arm, the keys in her hand. She took off my cuffs. Then we were moving together to my sister's room. As I waited for her to open the door, I looked into Ryan's room. My father was on the floor, blood flowing from an ugly wound on the side of his head. Beside him lay the metal bar from under the window frame. I could see the holes in the plaster where my mother had worked it out during the night. He groaned and grabbed my mother's arm to warn her. "Shit!" she cursed as she stepped past me. Then she pulled the door closed and locked it. A minute later, we had my sister and were heading downstairs. As we reached the steps, I heard my father calling our names and slamming against the door. We didn't stop, taking the stairs as fast as we could, clinging to each other. As we reached the ground floor, my mother gave a hard intake of breath and pulled us both towards her, turning our faces away from whatever was there. Another slam came from above us, my father's cries echoing down the stairwell. "Close your eyes for me, both of you. Hold on to me and we'll go together. Keep them closed. Don't open them till we get out, okay? Don't look." We stumbled down those final steps as she held us, guiding us forward. A crash from above made me flinch, but we kept moving. "Go on, almost there." We were in the lounge when I looked again. I saw the hallway to the front door, broke into a run, letting go of my mother's arm. Almost there, I thought. I didn't realize how quiet it had gotten until I stopped. The sounds of movement, my mother's voice, the shouts from above, it was all gone. I turned and found myself alone. "Mom? Maria?" I started to walk back. I couldn't imagine going without them. "Mom!" I called. Then I saw them, laying together on the ground, Mom pale and motionless on her back. Maria was crouched over her, her face buried against her neck. My sister looked at me and smiled, teeth and lips black with blood. There was a ragged wound on my mom's throat. A gunshot rang out, a sudden thunder in the cold silence. Maria's body spun and fell across my mom, a thin trail of blood raining down across the dusty floor. I cried out, but I was frozen in place, too shaken and frightened to move. I could see my father swaying, blood in his hair and on his clothes, pistol in his hand, still aimed at my sister's body. Then she started to get up. Her tiny frame rose in jerks, unnatural movements, more like a broken puppet than the girl I'd known. She made it to her feet and turned towards him, her head hanging bloody and limp, still smiling, though. "Daddy." He fired again, and the bullet struck her in the chest, knocking her back to the ground. I scrambled away into a corner, eyes closed and ears covered. Another shot. Then another. For a few minutes, there was nothing but the dark and my heart beating, flashing images that I couldn't push away. When I opened my eyes and took my hands away from my ears, it was over. My father walked towards the still body of his wife and youngest child. His feet dragged, arms hanging limp at his side. The gun fell from his hands and clattered across the wooden floor. He seemed to collapse as he went, falling down to them, making only wordless sounds of loss. I watched him there in the weak light, shaking and weeping over them, over the ruins of his life, broken and emptied of everything but grief. A pain for which no words would suffice. I don't remember getting up, walking to him. I touched his arm, and he saw me at last and pulled me close. The stench of sweat and blood and horror ran across us both, a wound that could never heal, only fester and burn. Outside, the sun was rising. I loved my father, even there at the end. He tried so hard to protect us, to keep us safe. But when humans are afraid, they miss the simplest things. They make mistakes, like thinking my sister was the only one. You're still here. Thanks so much for joining us for tonight's spooky tale. If you'd like a little bit more spooky in your life, why not click on one of the videos that appears at the end of our story? Or maybe head on over to one of our playlists where you can get your fill of spooky content. If you like your spooky a little more tactile, I've got a new book that's come out. If you'd like your own copy, there's a link below in the description where you can get your own copy of my spooky book. If you like what you see here on the channel and think you might like to support in a more monetized way, then why not come over to Patreon or become a member on YouTube? Speaking of, let's go ahead and thank our members now. Thanks to Civ Garstad and Unicorn Hollow for being our spooky ghost contributors. Thanks to Janet, Lee Kendall, Saikat, Ronda J, Sue Casper, and Valinator for being our spooky skeleton tier contributors. And thanks to Hi Stacy, Winter, Xaronan, Stephanie Carrington, Tyler Parker, Cinnamon Fox, Sarah ASMR42, Grim Reaper, and TomBoiTopUwU for being our Ghostly Reader tier contributors. And a special thanks to Grim Reaper, who appears to have subscribed not just on YouTube, but also on my Patreon. Thanks, everyone. We just couldn't do the show without you, and your support is always appreciated. If you'd like to support the channel, then come on down to Patreon, or become a member on YouTube. Spooky Skeleton tier contributors, that's our $5 tier, get their spooky 12 hours early, at 8:30 a.m. as opposed to 8:30 p.m. My time, of course. And while Ghostly Reading is only a tier that's available on Patreon, you get a signed copy of my book anytime I write one on your doorstep in, hopefully, a timely manner. If you'd like a book, we have many on Amazon. I've got links below if you'd like to follow those. Should get you to my page so you can buy any one of my 8 books I believe we're up to now. I'm sure they'd look really nice on your shelf, and I'll sign them for you if you can find me out in the wild. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.